The asshole for refusing to walk my daughter down the aisle? My daughter, 26 female, and I haven't spoken in years. When she was 15, we found out she wasn't my bio daughter and that my wife had cheated on me years ago with a friend. Turns out this so-called friend was suddenly interested in playing dad. My wife and I divorced, my daughter learned the truth, and I told her I still loved her no matter what. Of course she was interested in now getting to know her bio father, and while it hurt, I tried to accept that. She started pulling away from me after that, and even when trying to do things together as a family, she wasn't interested. The last straw was when she was 20 and living at my house. We argued because she dropped from her college courses, and I told her she either needs to go to school or get a job. Am I the asshole for refusing to walk my daughter down the aisle? She said I'm not her real dad, so stop pretending like I am, and she'll just go stay with her real father. That broke me, but I told her if that's how she feels, then there's nothing left to say. She moved in with him, and I was depressed for a very long time. My son, 24 male, was the only reason to keep going forward. For the first years, I reached out to my daughter and she wanted no contact. I learned to accept that and move on. Through my son, I learned that her bio father died and that she's engaged. She reached out and asked if I'd be willing to walk her down the aisle. I explained how she hurt me with her actions and said no. She argued that it's not her fault that she wanted to know her real dad. I agreed but said that how she treated me was. I know that if he hadn't passed, we wouldn't even be speaking right now. I said I hope she enjoys her wedding, but I want no part in her life. Am I the asshole for admitting my pregnancy at a baby's funeral? I, 32 female, am now 8 weeks pregnant with my third child. 2 weeks ago, my sister, 34 female, went into labor at 30 weeks and her little boy unfortunately didn't make it. It was understandably really traumatic and she's been inconsolable, especially because of the fact that it took her 4 years to conceive. A couple days later, I found out that I was pregnant at 6 weeks and 3 days. I figured it was best not to tell her as it was too soon and it would put salt in the already gaping wound. My family does know that we were trying. My morning sickness was getting really bad, but I never considered canceling as I needed to support my sister. The service did go according to plan, but problems started happening at the wake. Am I the asshole for admitting my pregnancy at a baby's funeral? My excuse for not drinking was easy as I'm teetotal, but it got difficult when my nausea hit. I excused myself to the bathroom and threw up. My brother's wife, who is one of my best friends, followed me up and she straight up said, "You're pregnant, aren't you?" I responded yes, but don't tell anyone because today's about making my sis and brother-in-law comfortable. She congratulated me and said she understood. Unbeknownst to me, my brother-in-law's teenage sister overheard and spread the news. My sister confronted me crying and asked if it was true. I said yes, but I didn't mean for her to find out like this. She screamed that I could conceive easier than a freaking rabbit and that I was flaunting my pregnancy while she suffered. Everyone thinks I'm the asshole except for my husband and sister-in-law, and my brother-in-law is refusing to look at me.
I moved into my flat a couple years ago. My mom lives about 10 minutes away walking distance. At the time I lived alone, so I gave her my second key. That way if I ever lost my key, I could just go to her place and grab it, or if there was ever an emergency, then she could help me. My partner of 3 years moved in with me about a year ago. I asked my mom for her key so I could give it to him, but she kept forgetting it, so I just made a copy of mine. My mom has kept her key, and though she swears she doesn't use it, I'll get home occasionally to find something is different, and my mom admits to causing it. My partner and I also have a baby, a 6-month-old. I'm currently able to be at home with him, but sometimes when I need to go out, my mom comes over to babysit. It was my birthday a few days ago, and my mom decided to let herself in. She planned to enter our bedroom and wake me up with a surprise, her presence in my flat and a card. Unfortunately, she got the surprise, catching me and my partner while we were busy. My mom left the room and let's just say it ruined the mood, and her joking after to break the tension did not work as she hoped. Obviously, everyone is embarrassed about this, and on the basis of not wanting it to happen again, I asked her for her key back. I told her the next time she wanted to come over just to call or text me and I would let her in. She refused to give the key back, calling me short-sighted, selfish, and ungrateful. She also said I'm prioritizing my relationship with my partner over my relationship with her. I said she's acting like a jealous ex and is creepy, she needs to calm down and leave the key. She then took the key and stormed out, so I asked my partner to change the main lock. My mom tried to get in yesterday to talk to me and make up after our argument, but when her key wouldn't work, she called me and asked for shutting her out and not having a conversation with her. She said that me changing the lock made her feel like I didn't trust her. Am I wrong for changing the locks? I met a guy on Tinder a few weeks ago and we seemed to really hit it off. We had a lot of the same hobbies and I felt the spark between us and I'm sure he felt too. After we got past the talking phase, we decided to meet at his house for coffee. It was great when I arrived. We talked loads and even held hands. However, I was on the 3rd day of my period and after a couple of hours, I needed to change my pad. I asked for the bathroom and he directs me to it. After I finish changing, I noticed his trash can is pretty full. Not sure what to do, I wrap it in toilet paper and sort of smooth it into the trash can so it isn't sitting on the edge. We hang out for about an hour more and he excuses himself to the bathroom. A few minutes pass by and he comes out and says that he needs to talk to me. Then he says I shouldn't have thrown away my pad because he might touch it when he's taking out the trash and that it was gross and unsanitary. Apparently, he saw that the trash looked different, unwrapped the toilet paper, and saw my used pad. I was mortified. I apologized profusely and he seemed to take it well. He told me not to do it again and if I needed to, just to walk a few blocks to the nearby grocery store to change. I left after that, not to think too much of it. However, I recanted of the events to a few friends and they think he's a major a-hole. He was really kind about it and didn't seem to get angry, but I'm also starting to see their point too. Was I wrong to change my pad in his house? I obtained custody of my sister's 3 kids back in 2018 after she left them alone for 2 weeks to go on a drug bender. It was a huge transition for the kiddos because not only did they have to switch schools and daycares, but they also wouldn't be able to see their mother anymore. I've adopted the kids and have full custody of them. They're doing better now and leading happier lives. Recently though, my sister was released from prison and wants to see them. She called me begging to have a visit with them and telling me that I could give them back now because she was out of prison. I've had a talk with the 9-year-old and he says he doesn't want to see his mom yet. He told me that he still hates her for leaving him alone. The girls have no memories of her. The smallest was only 3 months old the last time she saw her. I feel like I could have helped them foster a better relationship with their mom, but I don't want to force them to meet her if they don't want to. My close family has told me that the oldest doesn't know what he's talking about and it's my fault the little ones don't remember their mother because I didn't take them to see her when she was in prison. They also told me that it's my responsibility to force them to meet her even when they don't want to because it's what's best for them and they shouldn't grow up without their mother. I've spoken to a professional about this and they said it should be up to the kids. Am I being a jerk to my sister by not letting her kids see her if they don't want to? Part 2 of not letting my sister see her kids. I gave my oldest 2 weeks to really think about whether he wanted to see my sister or not. I figured that his original decision might have been made out of anger, so I wanted to give him time to make such an important decision. Ultimately, he decided that he did actually want to talk to her. I was a bit surprised, but we set up a Zoom call between them with me supervising. Right before the call, he admitted to me that he wanted to talk to her just to see if she'd say sorry. She didn't. Instead, she opened the call with, "Hello, it's been so long. I guess you're ready to come home with me now?" That's when she noticed I was sitting there with him. She immediately launched into accusations of alienation, followed by saying if I don't give the kids back, then she'd call the police and say I kidnapped them. My oldest was disgusted and asked her if she was going to apologize to him. She had the audacity to ask what for. At that point, he shut off the Zoom call. I asked him if he was okay, but he spent the rest of the afternoon in his room by himself. That night, he told me that he never wanted to talk to her again. I told him he didn't have to talk to her again if he didn't want to, and we'd never give him back over to her. Before now, I honestly never considered myself as their parent, even after legally adopting them. Now I realize those kids are my kids and they're going to be for the rest of my life. This is why best friends can be abusive too. I had moved to England with my ex around 3 to 4 years ago. We had broken up but remained good friends and just rented a house together. We weren't hostile and learned that we were better as friends than in a relationship. I started going out to local bars and shops to make friends because I didn't know anyone there. This is when I met a guy named Craig who quickly became my best friend. He was a little odd, had family in the area and his own flat. Shortly after meeting Craig, my ex moved back in with his family and I couldn't afford to make rent on my own. This is when Craig and I decided to rent a house together. We weren't romantically or sexually involved, we were strictly just friends. He was the type of guy who always had a few girls in tow, so he'd never be without a love interest. I started seeing a guy named Jay who would stay over a few times throughout the week, eventually becoming my boyfriend. Craig quickly made it known that he hated it. We would argue about him and I made it known to him that we were only friends, so he needed to stay out of my dating life. One night, Craig pounced on me in my room, getting on top. He put his knees on my arms and started to strangle me. He was saying things like, "Where is he now?" And I honestly thought I was about to die. As I felt his grip tighten, I thought of my mom who was only 4 to 5 hours away. I thought of how she'd never know what happened to me or how she'd have to identify the body of her only child. Part 2, why best friends can be abusive too. By some miracle, I kicked Craig off of me and ran for my life. He had double locked the front door, hit in my back, and smashed my iPhone. I was running down the stairs with him yelling right behind me that he was going to kill me. I knew the back door was open from him having a smoke earlier. I ran for it and made it to the street. I was barefoot, in shorts, and a pajama top. I ran for what felt like ever towards the town. 30 minutes later, I used a payphone and called the police. They picked me up and I told them the story. They took me to the station and took photos of my neck that had bruising along with my head that was bleeding from when he smashed me into the kitchen wall earlier. I sat in the patrol car as they went inside of my house to pick him up. They found him in the streets looking for me. They arrested him and put him in a cell overnight while dropping me off to gather my things. I was terrified he'd be released and come back at any moment, so I grabbed just a few of my things in a rush. I didn't have my phone or any money. I drove to a patrol station bleeding from my head with no shoes and bruised up. I broke down using their phone to call my mom. She was annoyed that I had woken her up at first, but once I explained what happened, she sent me $200 to fill up my tank and get something to drink to calm down. Then I drove to my parents' house. Craig got out in the morning and it was his word against mine. I blocked him on everything and changed my number, cutting off all contact. I sometimes still get flashbacks of that night. Storytime about the weirdest things to happen while working as a stripper. I was giving a $25 dance in a busy room filled with other dancers. It was the room for the cheap customers, so there weren't any dividers. Just a big room filled with armchairs and people watching each other get private dances. At this specific club, dancers were required to remove our shoes during private dances so we wouldn't damage the armchairs. We usually put our shoes and whatever else under the chair so that nobody would mess with them while we were busy. After the private dances, my guy and the guy next to me are the only ones to buy a second dance. The rest of the girls clear out and it's just me and another girl. When I look over, the other guy is sniffing the sole of the girl's shoe behind her back while she's grinding on him. We make eye contact and he drops her shoe. I don't want to ruin my own private dance by saying something, so I ignored it and just continued to do my thing. They were only 3 feet away, so it was hard not to notice things. I look over again and he's doing it again. He noticed me looking and dropped the shoe, looking away. Finally, a third time I look over and this dude is giving the heel of her stripper shoe a freaking BJ, all while making eye contact with me. This time, he holds eye contact and intensely stares at me. That's when I got creeped out and avoided him the rest of the night. I also never told the girl that her shoe had been defiled.